Story 1. I was living in Rosebud, a coastal town on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, Australia. Whenever I visited my family in Melbourne, I'd take a familiar route, a bus from Rosebud to Frankston, then hop on a train to the city. The bus ride usually ran about an hour, give or take. But one day something off happened. Something I still can't explain. I boarded the usual bus from Rosebud, grabbed a window seat, and settled in for the ride. About 10 minutes in, this random girl sat beside me. We struck up a conversation, nothing deep, just casual chatting. Time seemed to slip by. It felt like maybe half an hour, max definitely not more than that. And we hadn't even reached Frankston yet. The scenery outside the window confirmed that. Then I got a call from my dad, who I was on the way to visit. He sounded pissed. "Where the hell are you?" he barked. I was confused. "I'm on the bus like I told you I would be," I said. "I left about 30 or 40 minutes ago." He exploded. "You're lying, mate. It's been 3 hours." My stomach flipped. My hands felt cold. I immediately checked the time, and he was right. 3 full hours had passed. I looked around. Same bus. Same driver. Same damn road. We hadn't even reached Frankston yet. I hadn't gotten off. There were no detours. No traffic jams. Nothing unusual, except that time had apparently just vanished. I turned to the other passengers. "Hey, can anyone tell me what time it is? How long have we been on this bus?" People checked their phones, looked at me, then at each other. Their expressions shifted from casual to creeped out. One girl's eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. "We've been on here a long time," she said. "But it didn't feel like it." I tried calling my dad back to explain, but of course I just sounded unhinged. "I never got off the bus. I swear." I told him. He didn't believe me. To him, I was just being a flaky teen. Story 2. This happened when I was visiting family in Argentina for New Year's Eve. Summer weather, good food, loud laughter. The kind of night you remember fondly. We were having dinner outside, under the stars. My parents, uncles, cousins, everyone was there. A big white round table sat in the middle of the yard, covered in dishes, drinks, and half-eaten desserts. It was one of those perfect family moments. At some point, I went into the house. I don't even remember why, maybe to grab another drink or use the bathroom. It couldn't have been more than 5 or 10 minutes. I didn't feel rushed, just casually stepped back inside. But when I came out, everything was gone. The table? Gone. The food? Gone. The laughter, the people, the lights, all of it just vanished like it had never been there in the first place. I stood in the yard, frozen. It wasn't just empty, it was dead silent. No crickets. No breeze. Just nothing. The house is open concept, so I could see most of the interior from the kitchen. No one was there either. It was like the whole party had been wiped from existence. I started walking around, checking the back rooms, even looked under the damn table like an idiot. I couldn't find a single sign of life. My heart was pounding now, and I was starting to feel something I hadn't felt in years, real, primal fear. Like I was alone in a place that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. After 10 minutes of searching, I finally sat down on the couch inside to try and make sense of it. That's when I heard it, the toilet flushed. My cousin walked out of the bathroom like nothing was wrong. I jumped up and told her, "Hey, everyone's gone. I don't know what's going on, but they all disappeared. The table, everything." She just kind of looked at me like I was being weird. Didn't say much. Just shrugged and walked outside. I thought she was going to come back and tell me I'd lost my mind. But she didn't. So I followed her, bracing myself for more confusion. And suddenly, there they all were. Everyone was back at the table, eating and chatting like they'd never left. I stood there staring like I'd walked into a parallel dimension. I slowly sat back down in my seat, half expecting someone to laugh and say, "Gotcha," but no one did. I asked what happened. Where had they gone? They all looked at me like I had a third eye growing out of my forehead. No one knew what I was talking about. My uncle even joked that I'd had too much wine, but I hadn't even finished my first glass. I've replayed that moment in my head 100 times. The silence, the emptiness, the way it felt like I was the only person left on Earth. I've lost objects before, keys, a phone, a sock, but never an entire group of people. I told a friend about it recently, and she just casually said, "Oh yeah, that's a glitch in the Matrix. That kind of thing happens all the time." Story 3. I have a wooden cigar box on my dresser where I sometimes stash cash, collectible coins, and other assorted doodads, and when I was searching everywhere in the house for this car title, I looked in that cigar box multiple times and nothing of note was in there. Certainly not a car title, and certainly not any spending cash. I never did find it, and had to spend $300 on a credit card to replace all my vehicle titles, which had gone missing. I would be cash broke until I sold this car. I'd been short on pocket cash for a while, so a few days after this, I retrieved a gallon Ziploc bag of loose change that had been in my dresser for a very long time and asked my boyfriend to take it to his bank to trade it in for paper bills. The coins were originally in a growler, a 2-quart glass beer bottle, but probably 2 years ago I transferred the coins into a bag for the Coinstar machine in case I got in a pinch. And there the bag sat, untouched. Not even looked at for like 2 years. Now keep in mind, the biggest coin you can drop into a growler is a quarter. My BF got back from the bank and was totally shook and said he was devastated. His bank has a free self-serve coin machine. He said while he was pouring the coins in, he started noticing that there were solid silver 50-cent pieces getting sucked into the machine. He stopped and rescued 7 of them, but there's no way to know how many went down in the machine. A theoretical roll of 50-cent pieces holds 20. The pieces are collectible and range from $8 to $40 a piece depending on the year and the mint. But of course the machine would only count them as 50 cents each. He asked the teller if they could retrieve the coins, but they said the machine was contracted by a third party, so they have no access. What's really weird about this is I have no idea why or how those silver pieces would have been in the bag. My BF is a coin expert and had given me many antique and collectible coins in the past, but there's no explanation as to why I would have put any of them in a bag meant for the Coinstar machine. Another few days later, I sold the car and went to put the cash in my cigar box. When I opened it up, and right on top there was $570 in cash. In the same box that I had looked in several times a week earlier. I can't even figure out which part of this story is the most improbable, but it sure seems like the universe was trying to give me some extra cash and wouldn't take no for an answer. Story 4. I had something happen this morning while I was getting ready for work, and I'm just curious if anyone else has had something similar happen. I was in my morning routine, listening to an audiobook, drinking coffee, and setting up to do my makeup. I had already washed and prepped my face, so I was ready to get started. As soon as I looked in the mirror, my heart stopped for a second. I saw myself looking back at me, however, I was old. I'm currently in my 30s, but in that moment I'd say I looked to be 60-ish years old. My eyelids were more hooded/droopy, and I had wrinkles on my forehead and around my mouth/eyes. I blinked and nothing changed. I still looked old AF. I stared at myself in disbelief for at least 10 seconds. It wasn't until I turned away from the mirror and looked back into it that my face was finally my 30 years old face. It was so strange. One reason being I had just washed my face and did my skincare in the mirror in my bathroom. My face looked completely normal then. Another reason is it lasted long enough for me to really look at/examine myself, so I don't think my eyes were playing tricks on me. What in the actual fuck happened? Glitch in the Matrix or what? Truly a weird experience. Maybe one day when I'm old I'll look in the mirror and see my younger self looking back at me. Story 5. I own 2 pairs of sunglasses, one black and one brown. I found both of them on the ground, black pair in a subway station, brown pair on a hiking trail. About a month ago, I went to the beach with my partner and 2 friends. I brought the black pair of sunglasses and wore them all day. Then we went to a bar. When we left for the day, I couldn't find the sunglasses and commented on that. Ultimately, I thought, oh well, I found them on the ground anyway. My friend said, oh no, you lost Burberry sunglasses? I'd die. And my other friend chimed in saying, yes, seriously, how much did those cost anyway? I explained that I'd found them on the ground and didn't even realize they were Burberry. My partner laughed and said they say Burberry right on them in clear lettering. I figured I'd just never noticed before, and then suddenly I felt bad about losing them. One of my friends joked that she didn't think I seemed like a Burberry sunglasses kind of person anyway, and that she'd been surprised to see them. All 3 of the people I was with seemed to have observed me wearing sunglasses with the Burberry logo that day. I kind of forgot about the whole thing until today. I was looking through my backpack and found the black sunglasses in a weird pocket I wouldn't normally put them in. I was relieved to find them and immediately looked at them to see where the Burberry logo was. I couldn't find it. There was no branding. Confused, I took them to my partner and asked if these were the sunglasses he'd meant. He was confused and said no, these were not the pair. I showed him the pair of brown sunglasses, and he shook his head and said those weren't them either. It was a different pair of black sunglasses with the name Burberry on them. I moved to this country 2 years ago, and I did not bring any sunglasses with me. I have not bought any here. The black and brown pairs I found on the ground are the only ones I've ever owned or worn. So I have no idea where this alleged pair of designer sunglasses came from, nor where they went. Story 6. Right, so, if this is formatted badly, I apologize beforehand on mobile. Earlier this week, my husband decided he wanted to get a second-hand Goosebumps book for nostalgia reasons, as we both grew up with them. He searched for them on an app we have here in our country, where people sell things second-hand, and found what he wanted. He ordered the book from the seller, but decided to get the seller to send it to a pickup point as he wouldn't be at home that day. What is important here to note is that he did not give the seller our home address. The book was coming from the northwest of the country and arrived via post the next day. Everything fine. The very next day, Wednesday of this week, he got a message from a delivery company saying he had a package out for delivery and he had no idea what it was. I originally thought it was some kind of scam and told him to ignore it, but he copied the delivery number into the official page of the delivery company, and yes, there was a package out for delivery in his name. Later on, we found it in our postbox. It was the exact same book as the first one, which is weird in itself as there are hundreds of Goosebumps books, but sent from a second-hand bookshop in a completely different part of the country. He has never heard of this bookshop before and never been on the website. He hasn't been charged for the book, received any emails from the shop, for ordering, creating an account, etc., and he doesn't have an account on the shop's website. Nobody else knew the exact book he wanted except the original seller on the app, who didn't have his address. Story 7. This was a few years ago, when I was still in university. It was night, right after my Russian language club meeting, and my dad picked me up from the campus. I can't drive. We decided we'd bring pizza home, but on the way to Pizza Hut there was road construction, and we were forced to take a detour through a suburb. It was a big neighborhood, and we were driving for a while and couldn't find the way out. Went in circles a few times. Then we drove up a street that was on a slight upward incline, and from the height we both saw traffic lights, cars, and the top of a gas station straight ahead, finally the exit. When we continued forward, and of course lost sight of the traffic lights on the descent down the hill, we did indeed exit the neighborhood, but there were no traffic lights, no gas station, absolutely nothing of the sort even nearby, so it wasn't a case of something further than it seemed. Just dark empty field, and the neighborhood itself behind us. It was such a bizarre experience, and my dad and I both still talk about it. Story 8. This story happened when I was in my early 20s and living in a very small rural town outside of Helena, Montana. I was renting a basement apartment in a converted ranch-style house that had been split into 3 units. The top floor was occupied by an older woman who owned the property, and the other unit was empty at the time. The town itself was tiny, probably fewer than 900 people, and most of them knew each other either through church, school, or farming circles. It was the kind of place where people still left their doors unlocked, trucks idling outside the post office, and where the local diner closed by 2 p.m. every day. I'd moved there for a teaching assistant position at a nearby school, and while it was a peaceful place most of the time, I started to notice strange things happening only a few weeks after I moved in. At first it was small, low knocking sounds at night that I would brush off as the old house settling, or maybe pipes. Then I started hearing what sounded like footsteps above me. The thing is, the woman who lived upstairs was gone for a month visiting her daughter in Idaho, and the upstairs unit was supposed to be empty. One night, I clearly heard something heavy drop above me, like a chair tipping over. I froze, then called the woman's cell to double-check she was still out of town. She was. I didn't know what to do. I walked out onto the lawn and looked up at the windows. All the lights were off. I called the local sheriff's office. The deputy who came out was kind but very casual about it. He swept the house, didn't find anything, and told me that field mice and raccoons sometimes get into walls and attics, especially this time of year. I wasn't convinced, but I didn't have any proof otherwise. About a week later, I came home from work and noticed something strange. The back door to the upstairs unit, the one that led to a deck with stairs going down to the backyard, was cracked open. I thought maybe the wind had blown it open, but it had a deadbolt that was usually kept locked. Still, I didn't have access to that unit, so I called the property owner to let her know. She returned 2 days later. I told her about the noises in the door. She looked concerned, but said she hadn't noticed anything missing. Still, she agreed to change the locks and even installed a cheap security camera on the deck pointing at the back entrance. I hoped that'd be the end of it, but it wasn't. A few nights later, I was awake around 11:30 p.m., grading papers, when I heard footsteps again, this time coming from directly above me, pacing. I texted the owner. She was asleep. I didn't want to call the cops again over something I couldn't prove, so I just sat there frozen listening. The next morning, I checked the footage from the camera she had installed. Around 2:13 a.m., a man appeared on the deck. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, and he had what looked like a large camping backpack. He walked up to the back door, pulled out a key, and let himself in. That's when I realized someone had been living in the upstairs unit while the owner was gone. And he had a key. We called the sheriff immediately. They showed up within the hour and checked the upstairs thoroughly. Nobody was there. But in one of the closets, tucked behind the coats, was a sleeping bag, some food wrappers, and a few personal items, razor, toothbrush, and a small flashlight. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was damaged. But someone had clearly been living up there. The lock was changed again, and this time the sheriff took the key to examine it. He said it looked like a copy of the original, possibly made before the owner had started renting out the property. They never identified the man. The camera was cheap and blurry, and no one in town recognized him. After that, I didn't stay much longer. I moved out at the end of the semester. That uneasiness never went away. I still think about what could have happened if I hadn't heard those footsteps, or if I'd been alone in the house when he came back. I don't scare easily, but I never sleep as soundly anymore. Story 9. This happened in Bucharest in the mid-2000s, and it's my go-to-weird glitch in the Matrix story that I cannot explain. It's 11 p.m. on a Friday. I'm driving home and I get a call from my best friend. It's someone else on the line telling me my friend is extremely drunk, acting like an idiot in a bar, and if it's possible to come and get him as people are calling the cops and he doesn't want to leave. I go to the Old Town Center. I see my buddy with 3 of his university buddies outside of the bar, and they're completely wasted. There's a police car parked in front of me, but it's traffic police, so the cops are just watching me collect these messes and struggle to get them in the car. One of them throws up on the sidewalk. I'm stressed as earlier that day I had already gotten a ticket. I did a small mistake in the Victoria roundabout during rush hour. I'm being specific as this place will come up later. And the cop decided to make an example out of me and really scared me a bit. So I managed to get them in the car, and the moment I start the car the cops block me, and they check me for alcohol. They make me blow in the tester. They check my papers and stuff, and one of the cops is really trying to give me a ticket for anything. He's now saying I'm not supposed to be on this specific road or something like that. It's bullshit. He just wants to burn me. But the other cop comes and tells him to let me go because I had already gotten a traffic ticket that day, and apparently they couldn't give me 2 tickets for minor traffic violations in 24 hours, which is a rule I've never heard of before or since then. This was mildly weird, but not glitch in the Matrix stuff. Anyway, I drive them to the opposite part of town where they lived in the student complex. No more incidents. It's now about 12:15 a.m. and I'm driving home. I get to Piazza Victoriei, which is the absolute central point of the city. It's a huge square that's a roundabout from which every main boulevard of the city starts. So each exit from this square/roundabout is a huge 6-lane boulevard, and each boulevard takes you to a different neighborhood, and each boulevard is very unique looking, and it's very well marked. So it's almost impossible for someone who lives in this city to take the wrong exit in this place. It's also 12:30 a.m. by now, and it's completely empty, so zero traffic or anything that could distract me to take the wrong exit. I enter the roundabout, I see my exit, and I take it like I've previously done it hundreds of times. I get on the boulevard, but I immediately know this is not my boulevard. It's a completely different one that takes me in a very wrong direction. The only option I have is to turn around to the square. I say, okay, that's weird, but okay, I've had a very long day, was in university, and I also worked the 2 police encounters, both very stressful, almost 2 tickets, the whole commotion with the drunk friends. I turn around, go back in the roundabout, drive until my exit again, take my exit, and I'm on the other boulevard again. Same thing as first time. I say, okay, I'm a complete dumbass for doing this. I need to focus now. Turn around, get into the roundabout, drive until my exit, take my exit. I'm focused now on all the details. But nope, I'm on the other boulevard again. Now I start to get annoyed at myself. I start screaming in the car out of frustration. I turn around, get into the roundabout, drive slowly, I get to my exit slowly. Story 10. Okay, so this year 2 weird things have happened. A duplicate of a t-shirt turned up in the laundry. My son was helping with the laundry when he began freaking out over a t-shirt. I was asking what was wrong, when I realized that the t-shirt I was currently folding was identical to the one that he was wearing. We have only ever seen this t-shirt once on sale, which was when we first purchased it. Where did the second one come from? On to today, and I'm putting the washing up away in the kitchen cupboards. I come across one distinctive mug, then the second one of the pair, and then a third mug that matches the first one. I remember buying these mugs many years ago, and I bought one of each type, the colored one and the blue one. These were the only two options available. As it celebrated an event many years ago, they haven't been made nor on sale since. There is not enough space in the cupboard to fit all the mugs, as now I have too many mugs. Story 11. Today at work, I experienced something I can't explain and have no answer to. I am not a huge believer of we're living in a simulation, but it's hard not to agree with that after today. I am an electrician, and I worked with my brother, and the new guy who we can call Daniel was downstairs cleaning, and this was at the end of the day. We wanted to get the heck out of the job site. I was in bedroom 1, and my brother was in master bathroom. Then I heard footsteps going down, I assumed. My brother was done on what he was doing. I was working on putting a light fixture up till I heard my brother calling me from master bedroom. I found it weird because I just heard footsteps going down, and yes, it just me, Daniel, and my brother on the job site. Then I went to master bedroom and saw my brother. Was my mind playing tricks on me? I heard footsteps going downstairs, and I know it couldn't been Daniel's because he was downstairs, and even if it was him going upstairs, he would have said something, and plus he told me didn't go upstairs after we had lunch, and he promised and seemed serious. Also, you can tell the difference between footsteps coming up and downstairs. It 100% sounded like it was downstairs, but when I walked into the room, my brother was there, and he told me to look on how he was installing an outlet, something I knew how to do. So I found it weird. Then he just stopped, frozen time. I thought he was waiting for me to give him something, and I said, "I'll plate right," and still didn't say anything. I thought he was messing around, but he stood there. It felt like a minute, no face expression, nothing, but whatever. So I assumed he needed a plate for the outlet he was installing, and then when I went downstairs, Daniel told me, "Are you done up there?" And I said, "Just one more light fixture," and he, my brother, is doing one last outlet. Then he said, "Really? I thought he was done 10 minutes ago." And assuming this guy was new, he didn't know, so I said, "Ha, not yet, Amsat, he is doing an outlet." Then we gave me a look. "What do you mean he is outside putting stuff in his van?" Then I went outside to surely see my brother there. How was that possible? He was just upstairs. And I asked, "Did you do that outlet already?" He said, "What outlet?" I said, "The one upstairs you had me look at you do." He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And after that, I didn't want to look like a fool, so I just started to clean up. Kinda was creeped out, had Daniel come upstairs with me to clean up, but just wanted someone there with me. Then when I was done doing the light fixture, I wanted to see if that outlet was done, and to my surprise, nothing was touched, and I could have swore he already stripped the wire and had the wire already hooked up to the outlet, and when I left he was screwing in the outlet till he completely stopped. Then I cleaned up and had to ask him again, "Did you not want to do that outlet in the master bedroom by the window?" And he told me, "I didn't even get to the outlets today." And I asked, "Well, the one you were going to install, did you just take that outlet off?" He once again said, "I didn't, or nor have even did any type of outlets today," which was true. I then told him what I experience and laugh, and just said, "You need more sleep." My brother isn't the type of person to mess around with me, especially how confused and how it was making me go crazy. I can't explain what happened, but there can be many things to explain what happened. Am I the one who is going crazy? I am extremely paranoid, RN, and can't sleep. I've been looking around my room in bed, waiting for something or someone to pop up. Story 12. My husband has always given me a hard time because I lose everything. He accuses me of being absent-minded or too lazy to put things back where they go. Can't begin to count the number of times I've gone to get something. It's not where it's supposed to be. So then I start checking all other possible places. I'll check where it's supposed to be multiple times. Usually once I've reached the point of total frustration, I'll check the items home one more time, and there it will be. I've always just chalked it up to being forgetful, but there's always been this piece of me that feels like someone/thing is messing with me to make me feel crazy. Today, I was pulling up to the car wash. Started to prepay in the app. Remembered I had a voucher for a free wash. Located the voucher, had it in my hand as I pulled up to the entrance. Rolled down my window, and went to hand it to the clerk, and it was gone. I got out and checked all inside and around my car. It's not in my pockets, not between the seats. It is just gone. Guarantee it'll turn up somewhere stupid obvious later. Story 13. I have two kittens, a brother and sister, about a year old, close to full grown, but still super rambunctious. I work from home at the dining room table. Last Thursday, I was working on my laptop with brother next to me on the table, playing with my pen. I hear loud kitten zoom eyes behind me, and expect to see sister running past me. But no, it is brother being chased by sister. I see them run from the kitchen, past the dining room, and into the living room, where a half wall then blocks my view. But this whole time, brother is also still standing right next to me on the table. Brother sees the whole thing, and is now in full fluffy tail, ears back alert mode about it. I walked into the living room, with brother following, and sister is standing in the middle of the room, just staring at the empty coffee table. It's not the first time these crazy kittens have seemed to practically appear or disappear in front of me. They are so fast and sneaky. But it's the only time I've literally seen two of the same cat at once. Story 14. This happened this past weekend. I was in the kitchen with my kids, and my husband was outside working on his truck. I heard a knock on the garage door leading into the house, and I looked over and saw the door was locked. I naturally assumed it was my husband who was trying to get in. I opened the door for him, and he's standing there smiling and holding some tools in his hand. This is where it gets weird. I expected him to walk in or say something, but he just stood there. I was in the middle of doing something, so I said, "Are you coming in?" He didn't answer, and a few seconds had passed, so I shut the door and walked away because I thought he was trying to joke with me. About a minute later, he opens up the door and walks in, so I said to him, "What the hell was that? Why did you just stand there and not say anything or try to come in before?" He claims he never knocked, never stood at the door with tools in his hand. I told him to stop kidding around and that he was scaring me, but he swears he never knocked and stood there smiling in the doorway like that. I was getting upset and told him that if he was messing with me it wasn't funny, but again he swears he didn't knock or come to the door. He thinks I hallucinated, but I'm not so sure. Nothing like that has ever happened before. Could it be a time glitch? A dream? Even though it was the middle of the day and I was up and walking around. Could he have somehow blanked out and then walked over and knocked but didn't remember? Not sure how to explain it, but it's eerie. Story 15. So here's the deal. I work as a salesperson in a tabac presa, a French shop that sells tobacco, newspapers, magazines, snacks, and some electronics. Most of the time, I'm selling cigarettes, but also snacks, multimedia stuff, and magazines/newspapers. I'm mostly alone in the shop, starting in the early afternoon when my boss finishes, so we overlap for about 30 minutes to an hour depending on the day. The story happened last Monday. There are these two middle schoolers I'm starting to know pretty well who hang around the shop for an hour or less. They're mostly drawn by the fact that I sometimes offer them things like sandwiches that are going to be thrown out that day, so they tend to rummage through every item to check the expiration date, which makes them a bit of a pain. That day they started touching the headphones, asking me things like, "How much are these 6 headphones?" and other childish stuff like that. While they were loitering, some customers came in. There must have been 3 of them, so a small queue formed. While the customer in front of me was paying, I noticed the customer behind him picking up a box of headphones. It was a tall black man, around 50 years old, dressed almost entirely in black, with a graying goatee and dreadlocks. His facial expression was quite stern. Once he got to the till, he asked me for a Marlboro. No headphones. I suspected him of theft, so I glanced at the headphone display and saw that the headphones were back in place. I rang him up, he left, and shortly after, the middle schoolers left. However, I still had a doubt, so I checked the headphones and there were 5. But I remembered one of the middle schoolers talking about 6 headphones. I made a note on my phone, possible headphone theft at 3 p.m. The next day, at the time I start work, I asked my boss if it was possible to check the security camera footage because I suspected a theft. She fast-forwarded it, quite quickly so you couldn't really see precise movements, but we could still make out the different customers entering and leaving. She found the beginning and end of the middle schoolers hanging out and started looking for the customer who matched my physical description. Meanwhile, I was at the till dealing with customers. Once a first wave of customers had paid, I went to the back and my boss told me, "I didn't find the customer you're talking about. There's only this one who is also black, but he's much younger and dressed in white." Indeed, it wasn't him. She then said, "But actually there was a theft. It was one of your middle schoolers." At that moment, I was mostly struck by the fact that one of the middle schoolers, the ones I had been so nice to, was the culprit. But when I think about it now, the fact that the customer I was talking about simply wasn't there is strange. She gave me the controls to review the theft precisely, and I also took the opportunity to watch before and after to find the guy with dreadlocks, but nothing at all. I could have confused that moment with another. Maybe that customer was never present at the same time as the middle schoolers, yet I clearly remember having thought about asking the middle schoolers if they had seen him steal the headphones. So, what do you think? Don't hesitate to ask me for details. Maybe it will help me understand if it's just a simple memory lapse or something more. Thanks for taking the time to read me.